The new impoverished scholarship student falsely accused me of bullying her to get back at me. The two childhood friends who once promised to protect me forever tricked me, a girl terrified of heights, onto a bungee jumping platform. Despite my fear and pleas for mercy, he pushed me off the edge. The sight of my sheer terror made Chloe Sinclair burst out laughing. Vance Carrington and Julian Prescott were mesmerized by her smile, unable to snap out of it for a long time. As for me, I fainted from sheer panic. After regaining consciousness, I followed my family's arrangements and went abroad to study in London. I vanished completely from their world. Yet, 5 years later, when they saw the man by my side, my two childhood sweethearts were filled with regret. I saw Chloe Sinclair again 5 years later at a Manhattan charity auction gala. She was dressed in a white gown, ethereal as a sacred goddess. She had changed a great deal over those 5 years. Her former timidity and awkwardness were gone. She had blossomed from a simple little flower into a graceful, elegant narcissist. It was all thanks to my two childhood friends, Vance and Julian, who stood on either side of her. Like guardians protecting a delicate bloom, the three of them standing together looked just like a scene from a romance novel. It took me right back to that day 5 years ago, when I was tricked onto that bungee platform. Julian had come to me saying Vance was about to jump off the platform without any safety gear. It was an easily exposed lie, yet I believed it. When I rushed up, I saw Vance holding the bungee jumping gear. Julian followed close behind. They say fear makes people abandon all pride and beg for mercy. I'm extremely afraid of heights. By the time I realized what was happening, my legs had gone weak, leaving me powerless. Under my terrified gaze, Vance and Julian forced the gear onto me. No matter how I cried and begged for mercy, the two of them showed no sign of stopping. I didn't know why they were treating me like this. We'd been childhood sweethearts. They swore they'd protect me forever. But the moment I saw Chloe, everything became clear. They were getting revenge for her. A gentle smile played on Julian's lips, yet the words that escaped his mouth were cold and heartless. He gently patted my head. "Come on, Sienna, you can make the jump." I shook my head violently, stammering as fear took hold. I didn't bully her. It really wasn't me. "Julian, you have to believe me." Julian let out a sigh. He turned his face away. "Vance, you do it." I stared into Vance's eyes. "No, Vance, I didn't do it." But those eyes held nothing but cold indifference. He didn't say a word. Vance had never been particularly patient. His hand gave a sudden push. Thud. In that instant, I heard Julian's voice cry out with delight. "Vance, Chloe is smiling." Vance whipped his head around, looking in Chloe's direction as I plummeted downward. I could see nothing. A sudden sense of weightlessness engulfed me. I wanted to curl up, but in the fall, I couldn't find even a hint of support. Weightlessness, terror, suffocation, despair. I wished I could have died right then and there. The auction is now officially underway. This painting has been generously donated by Hollywood actress Chloe Sinclair for the charity auction with a starting bid of $50,000. The auctioneer's voice snapped me back to attention. The corner of my mouth lifted in a wry, self-deprecating smile. It had been 5 years, and I still hadn't completely gotten over that trauma. Just thinking about it still made my heart race. I took a delicate sip of champagne and lifted my gaze to Chloe's painting. Chloe was hailed as the ice queen of the entertainment industry. The painting also exuded a sense of aloofness, but the quality was just average. The lights in the venue dimmed, leaving only a single spotlight shining on Chloe. She raised her glass gently, a rare smile gracing her lips. The ice queen smiles. Even the two corporate CEOs next to her were reduced to mere background players. 100,000, 300,000. The bidding was fierce. That painting, which couldn't fetch $20 on the street, broke the $500,000 mark in no time. In auctions like these, it's never really about the item's intrinsic value. When the bidding reached $1 million, Julian raised his paddle to $2 million. No one in the entire hall dared to challenge him further. Just when he thought he had the upper hand, Vance raised the bid to $3 million. To them, $1 million feels like $100. I saw Julian let out a sigh, his expression one of helplessness. $3 million wasn't a low price, and Julian didn't raise his bid any further. They said something, making Chloe cover her lips and chuckle softly. The final painting was acquired by Vance. I looked away. 5 years, and they were still at each other's throats. As they chatted and laughed, the next lot was brought forward. It was also a painting. The moment the red velvet cloth covering the canvas was torn away, It instantly drew a collective gasp from the crowd. This painting was large in scale, featuring a bold, audacious use of color. A striking blend of black and red dominated the scene, creating a powerful visual impact. The entire piece was vivid and vibrant, radiating an overwhelming intensity of emotion. Compared to this one, Chloe's painting fell short in both technique and artistic conception. Chloe's fingers tightened around her clutch. In a standard auction, items of the same category aren't placed consecutively, especially when the gap in quality is so vast. But who else would be behind the organizers of this event but my Sterling family? The auctioneer's enthusiastic voice rang out. This painting, titled Rebirth, was donated by Miss Sienna Sterling. Created entirely by her, it draws inspiration from the artwork features vivid colors and a striking style, rich without being gaudy. Starting bid, $2 million. Once again, a single spotlight fell upon me. With the light, the gaze of the entire audience converged as well. I raised my glass with composure, a smirk playing at the corners of my mouth. My crimson dress made me radiant and dazzling. Even that vibrant painting on stage paled in comparison to me. The entire hall erupted in murmurs. Is this the eldest daughter of the Sterling family? With that look and presence, there's no doubt. Heard she just came back from studying in Europe. I heard years ago that Chairman Sterling paid a fortune to hire the master oil painter Alistair Covington. It seems he became a private tutor for his children. Truly worthy of being Covington's student. That previous painting was just a modest opener to set the stage for this masterpiece. A slight smile touched my lips as I gave a faint nod in Chloe's direction. A silent greeting to an old acquaintance. As my gaze turned toward them, the three of them were utterly stunned. Yet, beneath the shock, I didn't miss the flash of admiration in the two men's eyes, nor the panic in Chloe's. 2.5 million, 3 million, 4 million. Before they could react, someone had already raised their paddle to bid higher. This round of bidding was far more intense than the last. A detached smile touched my lips, as if none of this concerned me. Vance squeezed the auction paddle, a flicker of hesitation passing behind his gold-rimmed glasses. A moment later, he raised it. 10 million. Chloe turned to look at him in disbelief. Vance, however, didn't look back at her. Chloe bit her thin lip lightly, her eyes rimmed with red. Faced with her own boyfriend driving up the price for another woman's work, even she couldn't help but feel wronged. No one bid higher for a moment. It was just a painting. 10 million was way too steep. I remained still. As if I couldn't feel Vance watching me, the auctioneer on stage began to strike the hammer. With each strike, Chloe lost a little more color from her face. Just as the third hammer was about to fall, a casual, lazy voice sounded beside me. 20 million. Lachlan Montgomery's hand rested lightly on the small of my back. His entrance commanded the attention of everyone in the room. All eyes were on the man who could drop 20 million on a single painting. Lachlan cast a glance in Vance's direction. He lowered his head and whispered into my ear, right in front of everyone. A faint, scornful smirk played on his lips. You've been holding a grudge over these two guys for all these years? The warmth of his breath brushed against my earlobe as he spoke. A sudden wave of restlessness stirred in my heart, unexplained and unwelcome. I opened my mouth and muttered in a voice only the two of us could hear, "Get lost." Even after I scolded him, Lachlan wasn't angry. He just smiled and looked up at the auctioneer. Strike the gavel. No matter how wealthy they were, no one would bid over 20 million for my painting. Vance's expression darkened. Even Julian, standing nearby, looked displeased. The upper-crust social circle in Manhattan is just that small. As the sole heir of the Montgomery family, Lachlan was someone they all knew. He was already notorious back when we were in prep school. He came up most often in our younger generation's conversations. He had a rebellious streak. Mention his name and people thought of smoking, drinking, and street racing. Every family used him as a cautionary tale. I remember my mom once telling my brother, "You can coast through life, but you must never end up like that kid from the Montgomery family." During the auction break, Vance approached me with Chloe and Julian. As if there had never been any friction between us, Vance said with complete ease, "Sienna, when did you get back? Why didn't you say a word?" I didn't answer Vance. Instead, I smiled at Chloe, who stood beside him. "Long time no see, Chloe." Chloe's fingers tightened around Vance's arm. She must be terrified that I was back. Back then, she framed me for bullying, which led to those two scumbags pushing me off the bungee platform. They were probably afraid I'd come back and expose her slander. Chloe's smile was stiff. "Long time no see." Julian stepped forward, subtly blocking Chloe. He sensed her unease. Julian looked just as usual. Even though Chloe was with Vance, he still watched over his goddess. Julian shot Lachlan a pointed look. "Sienna, how come you're with the Montgomery heir?" Lachlan tightened his arm around my waist, his tone turning sharp. "What's it to you?" Lachlan had always been arrogant, and he never gave Julian or Vance the time of day. Julian was momentarily speechless. He never argued with people. Vance's gaze darkened. "What do you mean, Mr. Montgomery? Can we not even care about a friend?" Hearing this, Lachlan gave a silent smile, his expression lazy and nonchalant. "What kind of friends are you? How come I've never heard Sienna mention you?" Hearing Lachlan use my first name so intimately sent a chill down my spine. Even if it was just an act, it made me feel uneasy. I gave Lachlan's hand a gentle squeeze, hinting that he should tone it down, but unexpectedly, he wrapped his hand around mine instead. My heart skipped a beat. Under their watchful eyes, I had no choice but to let him lead me. Seeing that the timing was right, as if oblivious to their veiled rivalry, I offered the group an apologetic smile. "I have something else to attend to. Excuse me for now." With that, I turned to leave. But I didn't expect that just as I turned around, Vance would reach out and grab my arm. The moment before his hand touched me, Lachlan wrapped his arms around me and pulled me into his embrace. He swatted Vance's hand away with his free hand and grabbed Vance's lapel in an instant. The atmosphere between Lachlan and Vance grew dangerously tense. I remained silent, unable to fathom what Vance was trying to pull. Chloe stepped forward to intervene, her voice urgent. "Let Vance go." "What do you think you're doing?" Lachlan ignored her, tightening his grip on Vance's collar. His voice carried a dark menace. "Don't touch her." Vance didn't move. His eyes were fixed on me alone. "Sienna, about what happened 5 years ago. I'm sorry for." The color drained from Chloe's face in an instant. My heart remained utterly still. It had been 5 years. If they really wanted to apologize, they would have done it already since my brother took power. The Sterling family had risen to prominence, already showing signs of surpassing the Carrington and Prescott families. After that incident 5 years ago, the Sterling family cut off all ties with both of them. Now I was back, and I ran into him at the auction. This was the perfect opportunity for the families to reconcile. Vance was no longer the rebellious youth he once was. He now had business factors to weigh. There are no permanent enemies. If we could bury the hatchet through this, that would be ideal for him. Julian had also considered this angle. He seemed deeply remorseful. "Sienna, we were young back then. We never imagined we'd cause you such great harm. I'm sorry." Chloe pressed her lips together tightly. Vance and Julian had only pushed me back then to stand up for her, and now they were the ones apologizing to me. Her body trembled, radiating a profound sense of fragility, and she managed with difficulty, "Sienna." Before she could finish, I cut her off. 5 years ago is in the past. Aren't we all grown up now? My reaction was too understated. Assuming I was truly about to smile and let bygones be bygones, Vance was taken aback, a flicker of disorientation crossing his usually unflappable face. Our bond wasn't built in just a year or two. In the first flush of youth, Vance and Julian both had feelings for me. None of the three of us was willing to cross the barrier of friendship back then. Tesk, without a rope, that would be murder, wouldn't it? Lachlan interrupted their nostalgic moment. I tugged at Lachlan's sleeve, frowning and shaking my head at him. "Let's not bring up the past." I tried to act indifferent, but my eyes welled up the moment I looked up. My voice carried a faint hint of tears. "Sorry, we'll take our leave now." Vance didn't try to stop me anymore, but I instantly transported him back to our prep school days. As I turned to leave, the guilt in his eyes was unmistakable. I had accomplished what I came for today, so there was no point in wasting time on the second half of the auction. Once in the car, I wiped away the tears I had forced myself to shed, thinking of how they looked just now. A smirk tugged at the corner of my mouth. The real show was just beginning. Expecting me to let bygones be bygones and laugh it off as water under the bridge? In their dreams. In my first year in London, I also wondered if I should let go of my resentment and forgive them. But later, I figured it out. Forgiving them is God's job. My task is to send them to meet him. I was just about to tell the driver to go when the other car door opened. Lachlan got into my car with utter nonchalance. I frowned, my tone unfriendly. "What are you doing in here?" He seemed oblivious to my tone, leaning back and settling into a more comfortable position. Only when he was properly settled did he finally speak. Sienna, I just spent a fortune on you, and this is how you repay me? The restlessness in my heart stirred up again. Lachlan was really getting comfortable calling me by my first name. I met Lachlan at an off-campus party in Europe. There weren't many international students in our specific circle, so people liked to get together on holidays. When I first arrived and knew no one, I attended a few of these gatherings. One trip happened to coincide with a holiday, and we went to a vineyard estate in the French countryside. But to our surprise, the estate owner had mixed up the dates and double-booked us. While an upperclassman from our group was negotiating, I saw Lachlan leaning against the stairwell, smoking a cigarette. He was surrounded by Europeans, tall and long-limbed. He held his own among them without seeming the least bit out of place. Lachlan and his group had offered a massive premium and preferred not to be disturbed. The estate owner had no choice but to turn us down. However, this vineyard was quite remote. The car we hired to get there had already left, scheduled to come back up the mountain the next day. There was no other choice. The older girl had to go negotiate directly with Lachlan. She saw that he was American and assumed he'd be easy to talk to. Lachlan stubbed out his cigarette, a faint, ambiguous smirk playing on his lips. Sure. Before we could thank him, he pointed his finger straight at me. Have her come over to my room tonight for a couple of drinks. I was stunned. My companion was also stunned. The older girl immediately turned hostile. Don't you dare go too far. Let's get out of here. She grabbed my hand and started pulling me towards the exit, not even caring if we could make it back to the city on foot. Back then, my emotions could be highly unstable. It didn't normally show, but if someone provoked me, my thoughts could turn extreme in an instant. The doctor said this was a form of depression, closely linked to my severe PTSD. At that moment, my mind went completely blank. I pulled my hand away from the older girl and walked step by step toward Lachlan. He was so tall, I had to look up to see him. Lachlan didn't move, his dark eyes glinting with mockery. He was curious about my behavior and wanted to see what I'd do. The next second, I yanked a bottle of red wine from a nearby display cabinet and smashed it squarely over Lachlan's head, leaving everyone in stunned silence. Crash. The bottle shattered, and red wine mixed with blood streamed down his face. It trickled all the way down into his collar, staining his pristine white designer sweatshirt. Lachlan's companion immediately stepped forward, but Lachlan raised a hand to stop him. Damn. He closed his eyes briefly, his earlier nonchalant demeanor replaced by sheer frustration. Miss Sterling, can't you take a joke? He knew me. My friends, worried I'd get into deep trouble, pulled me back. We had the moral high ground before, but now that I had actually assaulted someone, our senior couldn't help but sound less confident. I'll cover your medical bills. Please don't call the police. Lachlan let out a bitter, incredulous laugh. After a few quiet words to his friend, he left the hall to clean up. We all assumed that, under the circumstances, he'd kick us out immediately and probably press charges. But unexpectedly, his companion told the owner they were willing to split half the estate's rooms with us. However, the cost of the broken bottle of wine was billed specifically to me. It looked like a regular bottle, but the bill I received was for a vintage Romani Conti. It was a blatant shakedown. Later, I realized he looked familiar. It wasn't until I heard someone refer to the Montgomery family that I remembered he was Lachlan Montgomery. Before going abroad, he used to run in the same circles as my brother. According to him, he just wanted to tease me a little and didn't expect me to hit back so violently. Lachlan had been pampered and feared his whole life. Even when he was out fooling around, no one dared lay a finger on him because of his family's status. He'd never so much as scraped his skin, and I had smashed a bottle right into his face. He held that over my head for a long time. Thinking about it now still made me angry. Back then, my family transferred a hefty sum into my account just in case. Meanwhile, because Lachlan's graduation was delayed, his grandfather cut off his credit cards. He ended up freeloading off me for a whole semester. I frowned at him in the present. Why are you in my car? He showed no awareness of invading someone else's space, leisurely closing his eyes as if settling in for a nap. My car got hit on the way here. I burst out laughing. Seeing me like this, Lachlan opened his eyes, squinting slightly. I laughed so hard I was gasping for breath, clutching my stomach with a mocking grin. I was just wondering why you hadn't shown up on time. Thought you might have gotten hit by a car. Looks like I was right. You've got a lucky streak, don't you? Perhaps I was taking a bit too much pleasure in his misfortune. A cold smirk curled Lachlan's lips. Careful, Sienna. You might just bite your own venomous tongue. I rested my arm on the armrest, propping my chin in my hand as I watched him. Don't worry. Even if you get poisoned, I won't die. Lachlan didn't say anything, turning his head to face me fully. After a few seconds of holding my gaze, his eyes drifted from mine down to my lips, a dark, meaningful glint lingering in his expression. A sense of caution rose in my chest. Just as I was about to turn away, Lachlan suddenly lunged. He grabbed the back of my neck, pinning me in place. He kissed me unexpectedly, fierce and demanding. My eyes widened in disbelief. He stopped short, only scratching the surface before pulling back, but he still ended up catching my slap full force. Smack. The driver in the front seat heard the commotion and glanced back, but quickly averted his eyes upon seeing our compromising position. Even after being hit, Lachlan didn't get angry. His eyebrows lifted slightly. A sly, fox-like smile played on his lips as he licked them. It's sweet. It won't kill you. I suppressed my rising anger. He let out a cold laugh. Mr. Montgomery, the sweetness is your own blood. When Lachlan had forced his lips onto mine, I'd bitten down without mercy. Lachlan let out a weary sigh. You really don't know how to treat a guy. I turned my gaze away, refusing to look at him. I was afraid if I looked again, I wouldn't be able to stop myself from punching his lights out. Lachlan knew I couldn't completely turn against him, which was exactly why he dared to be so reckless. After dropping him off at the Montgomery family's Manhattan penthouse, I went straight to our corporate headquarters to find my brother. My family dynamic is simple. My parents are deeply in love, and my brother is incredibly capable. Grayson had only been with the group for a year when my father packed up and retired. I often traveled the world with my mom while Grayson held down the fort. Over the past few years, Sterling Enterprises had been thriving. We'd already upset the 20-year balance of power that existed with the Carrington and Prescott families, but Grayson worked harder than anyone else to maintain it. It's already 11 at night, and you're still at the office. When I walked in, Grayson glanced up at me but didn't say a word. I raised an eyebrow. Normally, he would have greeted me warmly by now. After a moment, he spoke, feigning nonchalance. I heard Lachlan Montgomery dropped $20 million on your painting. I chuckled and teased. News travels fast, doesn't it, Grayson? My brother rubbed his temples. I'll have someone wire the money back to him tomorrow. Don't think throwing around a little cash will earn him your favor. I quickly stopped him. Lachlan cost me a fortune back in school. It's about time he paid up. Besides, it's a charity auction. I don't see a single cent of that money. Grayson, you absolutely cannot send him any money. We have our own deal. My brother fell silent. He lifted his eyes and looked at me seriously. Back then, Mom and Dad were too cautious to take action. Now I can. You don't have to lower yourself by making deals with a guy like him. Sienna, if even the people who hurt you go unpunished, how could I ever show my face in New York again? Hearing Grayson say that, my hand trembled slightly. My parents thought I'd long since moved on, but only Grayson knew just how deeply that incident wounded me. He knew my return meant I was here for revenge. I dropped the playful act, my expression turning dead serious. I've got my own plans, Grayson. I'm not a kid anymore. I'll make them pay for what they did myself. Let's drop it. My brother kept reviewing his documents, so I didn't interrupt. I leaned back on the sofa, waiting for him to finish so we could go home together. I was starting to doze off when he suddenly spoke up. If you actually like him, I'll support you. Though, never mind. I won't say more. His words snapped me back to reality in an instant. What's there to like or dislike? When did I ever say I liked Lachlan? What on earth is this nonsense? Grayson, however, acted as if he had it all figured out. I sighed. Forget it. The more I explain, the worse it gets. The next day, photos from the auction were blasted all over the internet. The viral post, titled "The Red Rose and the White Rose," was accompanied by two images. One of me raising a glass under the spotlight, looking vibrant and sharp, and another of Chloe Sinclair smiling softly, looking pure and ethereal. The post was retweeted relentlessly. Chloe's fans flooded the comments. Two women with such starkly contrasting styles made it inevitable for fans to pit us against each other. Along with her stans came the haters and casual observers. But under every comment praising her and putting me down, many people actually spoke up in my defense. I ignored it and let public opinion run its course. I'd started my own medical device company, Aura Medical, while studying abroad. It was no match for the Sterling Cooling family conglomerate, but it was a highly respected operation in its own right. Upon my return, I shifted Aura's focus to the domestic U.S. market. Most established conglomerates in New York originated in real estate. Even if they branched into big industries like auto or jewelry, domestic production costs for advanced medical equipment remained exorbitantly high due to supply chain monopolies. This created a massive gap for affordable, high-end manufacturing. Mr. Harrison from Apex Innovations, who wanted to collaborate with me, had scheduled a meeting early on. Harrison was highly ambitious. He aimed to develop an AI surgical robot and establish a mass production facility. This time, he didn't just invite me. There was another investor present. The moment Vance Carrington saw me, he was visibly shocked. With a beaming smile, Mr. Harrison said to him, "Vance, this is Sienna Sterling, a true visionary. Don't let her age or gender lead you to underestimate her. Her accomplishments in Europe are remarkable." Harrison was playing dumb, feigning ignorance. Corporate sharks like him are more cunning than they let on. My history with Vance is an open secret in our circles. There's no way Harrison didn't run a background check. Vance cut in, his voice tight. "We know each other." "Oh, you two know each other? That makes things much easier." I remained cool, saying, "Business is business, Mr. Harrison. You flatter me." Harrison was a natural at setting the mood, and over drinks, he managed to outline the project's broad strokes. I opted for tea instead of wine. Vance, on the other hand, drank quite a bit. Midway through, Harrison excused himself to the restroom. I knew he stepped out on purpose to give us space. Unlike the sheer professionalism I displayed earlier, I relaxed into my chair and broke the silence. I took a sip of tea and sighed. I still prefer the tea from back home. Vance loves tea, having collected various blends since prep school. I used to mock his hobby back then, saying he acted like an old man. He paused, a complex emotion flickering in his eyes. "I still have that rare Darjeeling I saved for you. I'll have someone send it to your place." For a moment after speaking, he seemed lost in thought. It was as if he only realized after the words left his mouth that we were no longer the innocent childhood friends we once were. I looked up at him, feigning pleasant surprise. "You remembered I liked Darjeeling?" Under my hopeful gaze, Vance's expression softened. A faint smile touched his lips as he murmured, "How could I forget? I don't even like tea. The only reason I keep Darjeeling is because it reminds me of you." Vance had hoarded quite a bit for me back in the day. "I don't live at my parents' estate right now." "I'll come pick it up whenever you're free," I said, before my tone shifted slightly. "It's been so long. I wonder if it's gone bad." Vance knew I wasn't just talking about the tea leaves. Silence fell over the private room. He let out a soft, rueful laugh. "Sienna, the tea itself doesn't change." He laughed, and I smiled softly. For a brief window, it felt as if we had made up, reverting to the childhood sweethearts we were 5 years ago. The tension lightened. After so many years, I found myself reminiscing with Vance about our strict AP history teacher, the vice principal who stuttered, the old oak tree at the campus gate. We had too many memories. Just as Mr. Harrison walked back in, we were laughing about the summer after our freshman year, when the three of us sneaked off to Cusco, Peru, and Julian got hit with severe altitude sickness, dry heaving while still trying to snap photos for me. The meal concluded in perfect harmony. This project was too massive to be finalized on the spot, and as an investor, Vance had to run his due diligence. He might have heard of Aura Medical, but he didn't know the intricate financials. Harrison wasn't in a rush. He simply arranged the time for their next meeting. Before parting ways, we reconnected on social media. I checked Vance's Instagram later. There was only one recent post. It was a photo of Chloe Sinclair stepping onto a stage to receive an acting award, captioned, "My Hollywood Superstar." We scheduled our next meeting for a week later. During that week, Chloe and I remained consistently trending online, though Chloe's PR team was doing heavy lifting. She manipulated public opinion, hiring troll farms to shift the narrative from mixed reviews to overwhelming praise for her. They even showcased her mediocre auction painting. The comment section under her posts was brutal toward me. "Our goddess's painting is beautiful. That other woman is clearly just some tacky gold digger trying to crash the elite circle, right? Who shows up to a charity gala dressed in blood red? Is she begging for attention? The white rose versus the red rose, please. That's the difference between a pure, cherished angel and a disgusting tryhard. How dare you compare that Botox face to my goddess?" The hype reached a fever pitch. As long as I didn't speak up, no one could verify my identity. Chloe was feeling incredibly smug. She assumed someone of my high society status wouldn't stoop to online squabbles. So, her hired trolls ran wild. She even went so far as to claim she didn't recognize me when a reporter asked about my identity during a red carpet interview. Suddenly, I was the internet's favorite party-crashing villain, and Chloe was the sacred golden girl. I wasn't in a rush. I let Chloe enjoy her spotlight for a few days. The day before my next meeting with Vance, an anonymous article titled "Beauty is the Least Interesting Thing About Her" dropped online. It publicly revealed my identity. It started by recounting my childhood achievements. It didn't explicitly name my parents, but from my surname and prep school records, netizens quickly connected me to the sterling conglomerate. It detailed how, from a young age, I excelled not only academically, but in elite sports, placing in a national clay pigeon shooting competition at 12. It covered my time at Oxford and the founding of Aura Medical. It highlighted how Aura supplied affordable equipment to European hospitals, and how moving the company back to the US was dedicated to breaking domestic healthcare monopolies. The article included a photo of me receiving a European corporate award. And then, there was the high-res image of my auction painting, Rebirth. The internet exploded. What kind of legendary life is this? She's a billionaire CEO at 23. And here I am, a 2-3-year-old, struggling to boil pasta. Am I the only one who noticed her painting style? It looks a lot like the famous master Alistair Covington. Could she be a fan? People started putting my paintings side by side with Chloe's. The difference in skill was objectively staggering, but Chloe's hardcore fans doubled down, refusing to admit defeat. What is this mess of black and red? My dog could paint something better. Talk about a cheap imitation. Does she really think she can rip off Alistair Covington's style? This has to be plagiarism. Hey, at Alistair Covington, you need to see this. Some rich girl is ripping off your life's work. I had no idea my former tutor was so chronically online. He posted a tweet almost instantly. Allow me to introduce my most outstanding student. The attached image was my painting, Rebirth. The backlash was swift and brutal. Chloe's fans vanished into thin air. Right then, I registered an official account and verified my identity as the CEO of Aura Medical. Overnight, I gained over 100,000 followers. I was returning to the US to dominate the market, and I needed momentum. This move wasn't just about stealing Chloe's thunder. We weaponized her PR stunt to boost Aura Medical's visibility. Catch the wind and seize the day. There's no better free marketing than piggybacking off a celebrity's scandal. You could say Chloe not only lost face, but handed me a multi-million-dollar publicity campaign for free. With that post kicking things off, my history was rapidly dug up. A prep school insider revealed that Chloe and I actually attended the same elite Manhattan academy and were in the same class. Videos of Chloe's recent interview where she claimed she didn't know me went viral again. Her comments were flooded with mockery. So, you were total strangers with your own classmate? I posted my first actual tweet that day. After all these years, I still can't stomach fake purity. The accompanying image was a simple photo of a porcelain teacup. It was at the absolute peak of the drama. Within minutes, thousands flooded my comments. The top voted reply read, "A toxic, two-faced mean girl. Don't tell me you can't spot a two-faced mean girl, because I sure as hell can't stand them either." I locked my phone and chuckled, imagining Chloe losing her mind with rage. Behind me, Lachlan's brow furrowed. The hand resting on my waist tightened its grip. Years of martial arts and heavy lifting had left his palms calloused. The rough friction against my skin sent a sudden tingling sensation coursing through me. Unlike my own natural warmth, his body temperature ran cool, making his touch impossible to ignore. The intense Latin dance session we'd just finished left me breathless. My chest heaved entirely out of rhythm. "Lachlan, I can't take it anymore. Please, let me go." Seeing that I was genuinely exhausted, Lachlan finally released me. I slumped to the studio floor. He grabbed a bottle of water, unscrewed the cap, and handed it down to me. "It hasn't been that long, but your stamina has really tanked." I took a few quick gulps. "Lachlan, who could possibly keep up with your tempo?" While in London, Lachlan had suddenly become obsessed with Latin dance and insisted on dragging me into it for 3 years. Seeing I had rested enough, he pulled me up to my feet. He seemed slightly distracted. "You're going to see Vance tomorrow?" I nodded, suspecting nothing, but was suddenly yanked hard, crashing solidly into his chest. "Do you really have to involve yourself with him?" I frowned, impatiently shaking off his hold. I don't like people meddling in my affairs. I certainly didn't think our transactional relationship gave him the right to act possessive. Let go of me. Don't you know boundaries? He seemed to reach an internal conclusion, his eyes crinkling as a sudden, genuine smile broke through his usual icy exterior. We're family. I looked up at him. I saw a faint, dangerous glimmer of hope in his dark eyes. I didn't know what he was expecting. Just as he was about to lower his head to kiss me, I turned away, leaving a single, deadpan remark. Nonsense. Lachlan was left standing there alone. When I emerged from the changing room, he hadn't moved an inch. His silhouette carried an inexplicable, heavy weariness. The next day, I arrived at Carrington Enterprises early. I had my team head to the conference room to set up while I walked straight to the CEO's office. While waiting for Vance's secretary to announce me, I unexpectedly ran into an old acquaintance, Julian Prescott. Sienna, what are you doing here? I took a deliberate step back, my tone cool and detached. Mr. Prescott. Julian froze. His expression looked visibly hurt. My strategy for Julian and Vance had to be different. They were polar opposites. Vance responds to a gentle approach, but digs his heels in if pushed. Julian, on the other hand, respects a firm hand and yields to coldness. Just then, the secretary ushered us in. Julian was intimately familiar with the Carrington building, so even though I kept my distance, he continued trying to strike up a conversation. Sienna, do you remember this used to be Mr. Carrington Sr.'s flower room? After Vance took over, he threw all the plants out. His dad was furious for a month. Hearing him mention Vance, a faint, fond smile touched my lips. Ah, he's still as willful as ever. Seeing my smile, Julian's gaze flickered. In the past, I treated both of them equally. Now that I was clearly showing favoritism toward Vance, Julian naturally felt a bitter sting of jealousy. He pushed open the office door. Vance looked up from behind his massive desk, but a flicker of annoyance crossed his face upon seeing Julian. I peeked out from behind Julian, grinning playfully. What's wrong, Mr. Carrington? Are you disappointed to see me? Vance maintained his professional facade, but I saw the corner of his brow lift slightly. He was in a very good mood. Julian, seemingly oblivious to Vance's shift in demeanor, plopped himself down in the chair opposite the tea table. Vance, it's rare for Sienna to visit. Make sure you bring out that fine tea you've been hoarding. I didn't hesitate, taking the seat right next to Vance's pouring station. Vance retrieved a vintage Limoges porcelain teacup from his private locked cabinet. Use this one. I ran my fingers over the delicate gold rim, offering a soft, appreciative smile. Thank you. The aroma of the rare Darjeeling was rich and fragrant. With wisps of steam drifting gently between us, an odd, intimate tension spread between me and Vance. Julian's gaze grew increasingly icy as he watched Vance meticulously pour my tea. Julian checked his watch. Chloe said she was coming to see you today. Why isn't she here yet? Vance's hand froze mid-pour, and he instinctively shot a nervous glance at me. Chloe and I had been locked in a vicious internet war. He was, of course, fully aware. Acting as if I hadn't heard Julian's provocation, I gazed expectantly at the teacup in Vance's hand. Vance shook his head with a quiet chuckle and handed it to me. I have a meeting shortly. Julian, could you keep Chloe company for a bit when she arrives? He didn't look at Julian as he spoke. His tone was laced entirely with quiet affection directed at me. Here you go. Careful, it's hot. I took a small, deliberate sip, letting out a soft hiss as it burned my tongue. Pouting slightly, I looked at Vance with an innocent, aggrieved expression. Be careful, Vance chided gently, his brow furrowing as he grabbed a linen napkin and instinctively reached over to dab my lips. I looked up, meeting his gaze. A flicker of deep, lingering hurt shone in my eyes. Vance could never resist that look. Whenever I looked at him like that in the past, he'd agree to anything I asked. Right at that exact second, the office door swung open violently. What do you think you're doing? Chloe's shrill voice cut through the air. Vance yanked his hand back from my lips instantly. He let out an awkward cough and shot up from his chair. Chloe, you're here. I didn't bother turning around. Instead, I calmly picked up my teacup and drained the rest in one go. The earthy fragrance lingered as I gently set the porcelain back on its saucer. Glancing at my watch, I addressed Vance smoothly. It's almost time. Vance understood immediately. Right. You head to the conference room first. Harrison should be there by now. I stood up, finally turning to meet Chloe's venomous glare, with a perfectly composed smile. What are you doing here? Chloe raised her voice, stepping sideways to block my path to the door. I'm here to discuss a massive corporate partnership. A partnership? What kind of deal requires a private meeting over tea in the CEO's office? I looked helplessly at Vance. He sighed, a sharp edge of impatience in his voice. Chloe, stop acting crazy. Sienna and Mr. Harrison are here representing Aura Medical for a multi-million-dollar joint venture. Me? Acting crazy? Chloe stormed forward and snatched up the gilded cup I'd just used. Who brings out their private collection for a standard business partner? Vance, ever since Sienna came back, you've been completely distracted. What exactly are you accusing me of? As if a hidden nerve had been struck, Vance's expression hardened. Chloe played the aloof ice queen for the cameras, but in reality, she was deeply insecure and suffocatingly clingy. After they started dating, she systematically isolated him, calling him away from vital networking events just to prove she was his top priority. At first, Vance found her possessiveness endearing, but after 5 years, the cracks were showing. Vance was exhausted. Vance's gaze turned icy. Can you stop being so unreasonable? What could I possibly have with Sienna? Chloe bit her lip, her eyes rimming with genuine tears. Vance, don't you forget what I went through 5 years ago. Her words sucked the air out of the room. Vance looked at me, momentarily dazed, as if a ghost had walked in. During our senior year of prep school, Chloe had transferred into our elite class as a scholarship student. In a prestigious Manhattan academy, the environment is a miniature corporate society. The kids there understand wealth, class, and leverage before they can drive. Chloe was book smart, but she didn't know how to read the room or navigate prep school politics. While I preferred spending my free time on the tennis courts, I once stumbled upon Chloe in the equipment room. She was soaked to the bone from a cruel prank, hugging her knees and sobbing. Though I've always been pragmatic and cold-hearted, I still draped my cashmere coat over her shivering shoulders. Later, I noticed Vance getting closer to her. Whenever the old money kids picked on her, Vance stepped in. With the Carrington heir backing her, the bullying stopped overnight. Summer break was approaching, and Vance, Julian, and I were planning our usual trip to Aspen. But a week before the flight, Chloe approached me, saying Vance needed to see me in the equipment room. When I arrived, the room was pitch black. I heard faint, wet rustling sounds. I hit the light switch and saw Chloe sitting on the floor. Her wrist had been shallowly slashed by a razor, droplets of blood splattering the tiles. Even though I was young, I wasn't naive. I didn't rush forward to help. I watched her warily. Chloe was exceptionally calm, a chilling, triumphant smirk playing on her lips. A second later, I heard Vance and Julian's voices echoing down the hall. I'll never forget the terrifying shift in Chloe's face. The moment the doorknob turned, she dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face, her voice morphing into a mournful, heart-wrenching wail. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please don't hurt me anymore. The door was kicked open. Vance shoved me aside so hard I hit the wall. He descended like a furious savior, scooping the bleeding Chloe into his arms. His glare toward me was murderous and completely devoid of our years of friendship. I looked to Julian for backup, but he just shook his head, a look of profound disgust on his face. Sienna, I never thought you'd sink this low. Chloe's two-faced mean girl act belonged in a cheap soap opera, but it worked flawlessly. The label of sadistic bully was permanently pinned on me. Unfortunately, the security camera inside that specific room had been conveniently broken. I tried to see Vance to explain, but he refused my calls. Julian shut me out too. I was just as stubborn and proud, so I packed my bags and left for Europe. By the time I briefly returned, they had set up the bungee jumping prank to avenge their fragile flower. Snapping back to the present, I turned my head, letting the blood drain from my face. I looked at Chloe with a fragile, shattered strength. You know exactly what happened in that room. It's been 5 years, and you still dare to accuse me? I wasn't going to bring it up, but you leave me no choice. Chloe, how do you sleep at night? I turned my tear-filled eyes to Vance. Vance, we knew each other for over a decade. You know me, I own up to my actions. If I hate someone, I destroy them openly. I never bullied Chloe. You didn't believe me 5 years ago, but look me in the eye. Do you believe me now? Vance's jaw clenched. Chloe panicked instantly. She grabbed his arm, her voice shrill. What is she talking about? She tortured me. I let out a broken, self-deprecating laugh. If I was really the one bullying you, I wouldn't have been stupid enough to do it in a room with a single exit. Giving Vance one last devastated look, I shook my head in profound disappointment and walked out of the office. Sienna! Julian rushed out after me. When I glanced back, Vance was staring after me, his expression tortured, his lips pressed in a tight, grim line. Once the seed of doubt is planted, it inevitably takes root. I didn't attend the Harrison meeting. Instead, I left the building entirely. Julian's car tailed mine the whole way to the Hamptons. I parked by the beach. The sea breeze was biting cold, and the sand was empty. I pulled my coat tighter and sat on a weathered bench. Julian quietly took the seat next to me. Sienna. Look, she's just insecure. She loves Vance too much. She didn't mean anything by it today. I took a deep, shuddering breath, turning my tear-streaked face away from the ocean. Then what did I do wrong? Julian, tell me. What exactly did I do to deserve this? My voice cracked. Julian froze. We practically grew up in the same crib. Why couldn't you trust me? I considered you my closest family. I choked on a sob. Julian fell dead silent. I've always been fiercely proud. He could count on one hand the number of times he'd seen me cry since childhood. He offered me a tissue, but I slapped his hand away. I sniffled, looking sullen and petulant. I don't need your pity. Sienna. I'm sorry. This time, the apology carried a heavy, crushing weight of sincerity. I let out a bitter laugh. Sorry? Did you ever truly believe in me, Julian? How much actual regret is in that apology? I knew he was only apologizing now because he felt guilty about the bungee jump, not because he believed I was innocent of the bullying. People like them, the Golden Boys of Manhattan, might appear gentle and refined, but deep down, they're wildly arrogant. Arrogant men refuse to admit when they've been played for fools. Julian didn't follow me when I drove back to the city that afternoon. The next morning, my old prep school principal called me. Both Vance and Julian had sent their fixers to demand the archived security footage from 5 years ago. The camera inside the equipment room had been broken, but the hallway cameras were fully operational. I had already paid off the right people to secure that footage ages ago. Based on the hallway timestamps, I had absolutely no interaction with Chloe that day until she explicitly cornered me and asked me to follow her to the room. I was confident that once Vance and Julian reviewed the tapes, their perfectly constructed narrative of Chloe as the helpless victim would crumble. My VP, Bennett, handled the Apex project discussions with Harrison and Vance in my absence. It didn't slow our progress. When Manager Bennett returned to our headquarters, she brought back 2 expensive tins of Darjeeling. She left them on my desk. I didn't need a note to know Vance had given them to her. Miss Sterling, Vance's assistant, loaded these into my trunk right before I left. I told Bennett to keep them and instructed her to specifically post a picture of the tea on her Instagram story. Since the boss doesn't want it, I guess I'll have to enjoy it myself. She had Vance added on her socials. He was bound to see the deliberate snub. Bennett also mentioned that Vance intended to bring the Prescott family into the deal. The capital required for Harrison's AI robotics facility was too massive for Carrington Enterprises to absorb alone. I knew Vance's dilemma. If this venture succeeded, it would secure a nationwide monopoly. But if it failed, it would catastrophically crater the Carringtons' cash flow. It was a high-stakes gamble. Bringing in Julian's family mitigated the risk perfectly. I instructed Bennett to greenlight the Prescott family's inclusion and expedite the contract signing. That evening, I posted a tweet. Still, my favorite is Darjeeling. But the attached photo wasn't of Vance's tea, it was a generic stock image. Over the next few days, I completely ghosted Vance. Yet, he sent premium tea to my office every single morning. Every single tin went straight to Bennett. Meanwhile, Julian kept relentlessly asking me out. At first, I had my secretary block his requests. He was persistent. On the 4th day, he bypassed security and showed up bright and early at Aura Medical's lobby. My secretary, terrified of offending the Prescott heir, escorted him to my private lounge. I deliberately arrived late, not stepping into the office until noon. Having waited all morning, Julian didn't show a hint of annoyance. Sienna, let's get lunch. Playing hard to get only works if you eventually give them a sliver of hope, so I stopped refusing. Julian drove us himself. I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window. He kept bringing up nostalgic memories, and I responded with half-hearted hums. I didn't ask where we were going, but the route was familiar. He drove us straight to our old childhood neighborhood. Returning to this place, my heart remained as cold and still as ice. He took me to the rundown pizzeria at the corner. The old owner had sold it years ago. As kids, the three of us used to sneak out of our gated estates to eat greasy slices here, escaping the suffocating etiquette of formal family dinners. But staring at the sticky table and the cheap pepperoni slice, I had zero appetite. Neither did Julian. He lifted a slice but couldn't bring himself to take a bite. He offered an awkward, pained smile. "Sienna, let's go somewhere else. I'll take you to Le Bernardine." I didn't move. I just stared at him. The silence stretched until he finally cracked. He asked, his voice hollow, "Can we ever go back to the way things were? Even the pizza we used to love tastes like ash now. If a simple slice is ruined, what about us?" My gaze turned freezing. Our childhood friendship had been dead and buried for 5 years. I only weaponized it because it served my endgame. I asked bluntly, "Julian, do you finally believe me?" His lips parted, but no sound came out. I let out a soft, derisive snort. Without waiting for his excuses, I grabbed my bag and stood up to leave. "Sienna, I believe you." Julian's voice rang out behind me, desperate and firm. He reached out and caught my wrist. I saw the hallway tapes. I was a fool 5 years ago. "Sienna, I believe you." I looked down at him, and a slow, beautiful smile blossomed on my face, melting away the winter ice. Seeing me smile, he exhaled a shaky breath, his eyes crinkling with profound relief. After that day, my dynamic with Julian shifted entirely. He dropped by my office for lunch, bringing my favorite oat milk lattes and artisan pastries. To him, it felt as if we had truly healed the rift. The medical device contract was finalized, and I continued actively dodging Vance. I didn't show my face until the official signing ceremony. This was New York's biggest tech merger of the year, complete with a massive press junket. My styling team gave me a sleek, razor-sharp corporate look, pinning my hair up tightly. It was a stark departure from my usual glamorous, vibrant style. The seating arrangement placed Julian and me on opposite ends of the mahogany table, with Vance seated directly to my left. Vance tried to catch my eye constantly, but I treated him like empty air. I even happily waved to Julian over Vance's head. Julian seemed to enjoy getting under Vance's skin, loudly inviting me to an exclusive omakase dinner the next night. Vance's jaw ticked, his face darkening visibly, but he couldn't throw a tantrum with 20 camera crews flashing in his face. Once the ink was dry, the four of us stood for photos. During the Q&A, a sleazy gossip reporter hijacked the mic. "Miss Sterling, netizens have proven you and Chloe Sinclair were classmates. Why would she publicly claim she didn't know you?" The room went dead silent. The corporate executives shifted uncomfortably. I glanced at Vance, my expression perfectly neutral, and spoke directly into the mic. "Perhaps Chloe's memory is slipping." The journalist pressed harder. "Is there bad blood between you two? Rumor has it there's a love triangle involving Mr. Carrington and Mr. Prescott?" The air pressure around Vance plummeted. PR staff rushed forward to kill the mic, but Julian smoothly stepped up, taking the podium. He offered a charming, self-deprecating smile. "I'm afraid I don't possess the kind of charm required to make Mr. Carrington jealous." He deliberately elevated my status while diffusing the tension. I offered Julian a knowing, affectionate smile, and the cameras went wild, capturing the chemistry. Once the session ended, Julian placed a protective hand on the small of my back, escorting me out of the flashes. That evening, Harrison hosted an ultra-exclusive celebration banquet. The invitations carried the heavy weight of the Prescott and Carrington names, meaning only the absolute apex of New York society made the list. Even the Montgomery family attended. I hadn't seen Lachlan since he stormed out of the dance studio. I'd heard there was an aggressive internal power struggle within his family's board, keeping him out of the city. Seeing him now, he looked like he'd lost a little weight, making his cheekbones even sharper. He stood out in the ballroom like a wolf among sheep. His bespoke tuxedo accentuated his tall, lethal frame. A young, wealthy socialite was chattering incessantly beside him. I couldn't hear what she said, but Lachlan raised an eyebrow, a faint, genuinely amused smirk on his lips, an expression I rarely saw him give anyone else. The ballroom was a sea of clinking crystal and calculated networking. Harrison kept dragging me around to shake hands with senators and tech moguls until I grew bored. Just as I was looking for an escape, the orchestra shifted tempos. Julian, looking every bit the fairy tale prince, bowed slightly and extended his hand. "Sienna, may I have this dance?" The opening waltz was highly anticipated. I smiled and nodded gracefully. I had chosen a minimalist, backless black gown for the night, a sharp contrast to my usual bright reds. The dark fabric gave me an aura of untouchable mystery. The melody was sweeping, and Julian was a flawless lead. He'd whisper nostalgic jokes in my ear, making me tilt my head back and laugh softly. To the hundreds of watching eyes, we looked like the ultimate power couple. When the applause faded, I excused myself to the second floor to touch up my makeup. Harrison had reserved a lavish VIP suite up there. I made absolutely sure to brush past Vance on my way to the stairs, locking eyes with him just long enough to ensure he knew exactly which room I was entering. Once inside the suite, I pulled 2 specific prescription bottles from my clutch and arranged them prominently on the glass coffee table. I deliberately messed up my pristine updo, pulling strands loose to look unhinged and exhausted. A moment later, a sharp knock hit the door. I pulled it open, fully expecting Vance. Instead, a massive frame shoved me backward into the room, kicking the door shut. Before I could scream, I was swallowed in a desperate, ravenous kiss. The heavy, intoxicating scent of agarwood and expensive bourbon flooded my senses. Lachlan pinned me against the wall, his mouth devouring mine with punishing intensity. I tried to push him off, but his grip on my waist was ironclad. The sheer, overwhelming possessiveness radiating from him paralyzed me. My resistance crumbled, and I let him take what he wanted. When he finally pulled back, my lips were swollen and throbbing. His chest heaved, his voice raw with a dangerous longing. Sienna, Before he could finish his confession, I slapped him across the face. Smack. In the dim light, a flash of genuine hurt fractured Lachlan's arrogant facade. The corner of his mouth was red. He looked down at me like a feral dog that had just been kicked by its owner. I let out a shaky sigh, opening my mouth to curse him out. Knock. Knock. This time, I jumped. It had to be Vance. If Vance caught me making out with the Montgomery heir, months of meticulous psychological manipulation would be ruined. Pure instinct took over. I grabbed Lachlan by the lapels and shoved him hard toward the ensuite bathroom. Lachlan, do not come out. If you make a sound, I will end you. Lachlan actually had the nerve to look offended, leaning against the doorframe like a wronged lover. I shoved him inside and slammed the bathroom door shut. Taking a deep, ragged breath to get into character, I cracked open the main suite door. Vance stood in the hallway. He looked conflicted, as if fighting a violent internal battle. But the moment his eyes landed on my disheveled state, his corporate armor cracked. Sienna? What's wrong? Thanks to Lachlan's aggressive assault, I didn't even need to fake the physical symptoms. My lips were swollen and bitten raw, my eyes were flushed, and my breathing was erratic. My black dress was wrinkled at the hips. Tears welled in my eyes as I stepped back, my voice dripping with forced, icy distance. Mr. Carrington, is there something you need? Vance froze. Are you feeling unwell? My body swayed precariously. I shrank back, acting terrified of his physical presence. I let out a broken, hollow laugh and turned away, staggering toward the sofa. Vance immediately followed me inside. The 2 amber pill bottles on the table were glaringly obvious. Vance spotted them instantly and reached out. I lunged to hide them, a futile, pathetic gesture, but he snatched them first. He squinted at the labels. Paroxetine. Sertraline. I'd specifically brought bottles that listed the treated conditions on the pharmacy sticker. I collapsed onto the sofa, burying my face in my hands as if my darkest secret had been exposed. Vance's head snapped up. His voice shook. Sienna, why are you taking heavy antidepressants and panic medication? I forced a brittle smile, tears finally spilling over my lashes. Why do you think? Do you really have to ask? He dropped the bottles, stepping closer. Is this because of me? I didn't answer, letting the tears flow freely. He'd never seen me broken. He was completely out of his depth. I choked out a sob. I regret ever leaving for London. Vance's eyes turned red. The guilt was finally drowning him. I gasped for air, clutching my chest, mimicking a textbook hyperventilation attack. Sienna, are you okay? Sienna, breathe. Vance dropped to his knees, catching me as I practically fainted into his chest. Don't scare me like this, please. As he reached frantically for his phone to dial 911, I grabbed his lapel, my knuckles white. My medicine. He scrambled to open the bottle, shaking a pill into his palm and helping me swallow it with a glass of water. He stayed on his knees, holding my trembling hands until my fake hyperventilation subsided. Sienna, what happened to you? I let out a wet, self-deprecating laugh. It's a physical symptom of my PTSD and severe panic disorder. Sorry to scare you. I haven't had an episode this bad in months. Vance went rigid. I stared blankly ahead, delivering my monologue. Back then, you and Julian didn't believe me. My therapist said I spent years living in a state of violent self-denial. Being pushed off that high platform broke something in my brain. It left me with this. I looked down at him with a pitiable, forgiving gaze. When I first moved to London, I couldn't sleep without chemical sedatives. The doctors said if I could just forget the betrayal, I'd heal. But Vance couldn't take it anymore. He crushed me against his chest in a desperate embrace. I'm sorry. Sienna, God, I'm so damn sorry. I buried my face in his shoulder, sobbing quietly. You knew how terrified I was of heights. Why did you do that to me? Vance, I swear on my life, I never touched Chloe. Vance remained silent, stroking my hair. He'd been with Chloe for 5 years. Admitting she was a psychotic liar meant admitting his entire adult life was built on a delusion. Yet, feeling my frail, trembling body in his arms, the last of his defenses shattered. Just then, the suite door was kicked wide open. Chloe barged in, her face twisted in fury. Vance shoved me away instantly, leaping to his feet in pure panic. Chloe stared at the two of us, the messy hair, the tears. Vance on his knees, her eyes filled with absolute, venomous disgust. She didn't scream. She didn't throw a tantrum. She just turned on her heel and fled. Vance looked back at me, torn, before sprinting out the door after her. It happened so fast, the room was still vibrating. Before I could drop the crying act, the bathroom door clicked open. Lachlan strolled out, clapping slowly. Damn, Miss Sterling. Your acting is Oscar-worthy. I grabbed a tissue, wiping the fake tears and smeared mascara from my face. My expression snapped back to ice. You texted Chloe. I figured if someone didn't interrupt, you two would end up rolling around on that sofa. I narrowed my eyes, glaring up at his arrogant face. What's the matter, Mr. Montgomery? Are you jealous? Or are you just mad you aren't the one rolling around with me? He didn't get defensive. Instead, a wicked, carnal smirk spread across his lips. You're absolutely right. I just want to drag you into bed. I gave him a hollow, sarcastic smile. Lachlan leaned against the doorframe, slipping his hands into his pockets, oozing lazy confidence. My objective for the night was achieved. Chloe catching Vance in a compromising, highly emotional state was exactly the catalyst I needed. I had no desire to bicker with Lachlan. I grabbed my clutch, preparing to leave, but he blocked the door. Before I could snap at him, he stepped forward and effortlessly swept me off my feet, cradling me against his chest. Are you insane? Put me down! Lachlan's face remained stone cold. He carried me back to the sofa and tossed me down. The world spun. Before I could sit up, he caged me in, his scorching body pressing flush against mine. His dark eyes were bottomless, swirling with a storm I couldn't read. The rich scent of agarwood enveloped me, making me dizzy. Sienna, what am I to you? His voice was hoarse, fractured with a vulnerability that pierced straight through my chest. I've always viewed the world in brutal absolutes. People like us don't chase fairy tale romance. He's a lethal corporate shark and a brilliant opponent, but men like him don't make safe husbands. I prioritize money, leverage, and power above all else. So does he. He was pressed so tightly against me I could feel the hard lines of his muscles through his tailored suit. I turned my face away, avoiding the heat of his breath. Mr. Montgomery, Miss Kensington is waiting for you downstairs. Lachlan's body went rigid. A flash of genuine anger crossed his face. He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look him in the eye. No one stands between us. The ball was in my court. Playing dumb wouldn't work anymore. I knew Lachlan was obsessed with me. I'd known for years. Even though my parents have a perfect marriage, I harbor zero illusions about love. Lachlan and I are cut from the same ruthless cloth. The ends justify the means. He's the type to burn down a city over a slight. They say a ruthless woman needs a fiercely devoted guard dog, but Lachlan could never be tamed. He's loyal to power, not to a person. So, I ignored his advances. He'd never forced the issue before today. Who knew my little theater act with Vance would push him to the brink of losing control? A cruel smile played on my lips. Lachlan, would you burn your inheritance to the ground for me? His lips parted, but silence filled the room. We both knew the answer. He was the sole heir, groomed from birth to rule the Montgomery Empire. The crown was permanently bolted to his skull. I raised my hand, gently tracing the sharp line of his jaw. A stray lock of dark hair fell across his forehead, making him look devastatingly handsome. He leaned into my touch, dazed. I lifted my chin and pressed a fleeting, agonizingly soft kiss to the corner of his mouth. My voice was a toxic whisper. You deserve a proper corporate wife, not a venomous snake like me. Let me go. Harper is waiting. Our relationship was built on a knife's edge, a quid pro quo of long-con schemes and mutual exploitation. I use him, he uses me. I don't want a love that burns the world down. I want the Carrington and Prescott empires to collapse into dust. Every person who looked down on me will pay in blood. Reason must always conquer emotion. I shoved him back and walked out. Downstairs, the gala was still roaring. Vance was presumably chasing Chloe through the streets, and Julian was cornered by Harrison. I grabbed a glass of milk from a waiter's tray and navigated the crowd toward Harper Kensington. Manhattan high society is insular. I'd heard whispers about the Montgomery family's late-born cousin. Harper was born with a severe congenital heart defect, kept sheltered and protected her entire life. She was never meant for the cutthroat boardroom. She was raised to be a prized, delicate jewel. Despite her fragile health, her family commanded immense wealth, making her the ultimate prize for every gold-digging bachelor in the room. With Lachlan currently upstairs, Harper was backed into a corner by a pack of hungry wolves in suits. I cleared my throat sharply and sliced right through the circle of men. Harper looked terrified, gripping her champagne flute like a weapon. I stepped smoothly in front of her, shielding her from view, and locked eyes with the most aggressive suitor. Excuse me. I need to speak with Harper privately. My tone left no room for debate. No matter how brazen these trust fund kids were, they withered under the sterling air's glare. As the vultures scattered, I gently pried the champagne from Harper's white-knuckled grip and replaced it with the milk. Here, drink this. She blinked at the glass, her cheeks flushing. Thank you. I smiled, shaking my head. You were gripping that crystal so hard I thought it was going to shatter in your hand. Harper was refreshingly innocent, her face still holding a hint of youthful softness. Once the men were gone, she immediately started chattering. Ugh, the catering here is so pretentious and awful. Sienna, you must be starving too, right? There's a killer Korean BBQ spot a few blocks away. Their short ribs are to die for. Or, we could hit that Michelin star French place on the back street? She was loud, but not grating. Hearing her list off food suddenly reminded me I hadn't eaten since my awkward lunch with Julian. A dull, hollow ache started gnawing at my stomach. Just as I was debating dragging her to the BBQ joint, a blinding, explosive pain cracked across the back of my skull. Smash. A freezing chill ran down my spine. The world tilted violently. Warm liquid poured down my neck. I would have collapsed if Harper hadn't screamed and caught my arm. What the hell are you doing? Harper shrieked, pointing behind me. Julian materialized out of nowhere, catching my waist to keep me upright. He roared at the attacker. Chloe, have you lost your mind? I blinked through the dizzying haze. Chloe Sinclair stood there, a shattered wine glass in her bleeding hand, her face twisted in psychotic fury. What am I doing? Chloe screamed, pointing a jagged piece of glass at me. Ask the glamorous CEO Sterling. Behind the scenes, she's nothing but a cheap whore seducing other women's men. First you try to steal Julian, and now you're begging Vance to sleep with you. The ballroom music screeched to a halt. A wave of horrified whispers rippled through the elite crowd. Seriously? You can't judge a book by its cover. His pregnant girlfriend just glassed her. That pretty much confirms the rumors. CEO Sterling acts so high and mighty. Who knew she was so desperate in private? Huh. I'd love to see what kind of tricks she pulls behind closed doors. Crack. The smarmy tech bro who just spoke was brutally knocked out cold with a single devastating right hook. The crowd screamed and scrambled backward. I forced my heavy eyelids up to see Lachlan standing over the unconscious man, his polished leather shoe planted firmly on the guy's throat. Lachlan's face was an emotionless mask of pure, homicidal rage. Say that again, Lachlan whispered, his voice echoing in the dead silent room. The man beneath his boot choked and sputtered blood, begging for mercy. I didn't say anything. I swear. I was out of line, Mr. Montgomery. Please. Lachlan dragged his icy gaze across the crowd. No one dared to breathe. A warm wetness continued soaking my collar. I raised a trembling hand to the back of my neck. My fingers came back coated in crimson blood. Right at that moment, Vance finally burst back into the ballroom, panting heavily. He froze, staring at the chaos, Chloe holding bloody glass, Lachlan curb-stomping a guest, and me bleeding out in Julian's arms. My vision was swimming. I shook my head, fighting to stay conscious. Chloe, when did I ever try to seduce Vance? He's right here. Why don't you ask him to explain himself? Hundreds of eyes snapped to Vance. He immediately realized what Chloe had done. His face contorted in pure rage. Chloe, stop this insanity. I've known Sienna for 10 years. If there was anything between us, it would have happened a decade ago. Apologize to her right now. Chloe let out a hysterical, broken laugh. I'm insane? Vance, do you even hear yourself? My knees buckled. Julian tightened his grip, taking my full weight. He glared at Chloe with absolute disgust, the exact same look he had given me 5 years ago in the equipment room. The cycle of karma had fully rotated. Chloe, you belong in a psych ward. Chloe gasped, staring at him like he had stabbed her. Julian, don't speak to me. Julian spat. I desperately wanted to stay awake to watch Chloe's total mental breakdown, but the blood loss was catching up. The room faded to black. The last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was Lachlan violently shoving people aside, his hands reaching for me. When I opened my eyes, the harsh fluorescent lights of a VIP hospital suite blinded me. My head was heavily bandaged, throbbing with a dull ache. My brother, Grayson, was dozing on the leather recliner by the window. He snapped awake the second I shifted. You're up. I gave a weak hum, avoiding his lethal glare. So, this is your grand master plan, Grayson sneered, his arms crossed. Getting your skull cracked open before you even bankrupt them. Brilliant strategy, Sienna. I offered a pathetic, placating smile. Grayson, what happened? My brother sighed, rubbing his face. NYPD hauled Chloe out in handcuffs. She's sitting in a holding cell. The DA is waiting for you to wake up to press felony assault charges. I smiled internally. Chloe had essentially handed me the final nail for her own coffin. Just then, a sharp cramp hit my stomach. I'd been starving before the gala, and now I was running on empty. I pouted, deploying the little sister act. Grayson, I'm starving. He grabbed an insulated delivery bag from the counter. Lachlan and Harper dropped this off. Looking at the elegant logo on the bag, I chuckled. Looks like Harper won the debate. It was the Michelin-starred French cuisine, not the BBQ. Grayson scowled as he unpacked the lobster bisque. What exactly is going on between you and Montgomery? I thought the psycho was obsessed with you. He carried you in here covered in your blood, paced the hall for 2 hours, and then vanished the second Harper showed up without saying a word to me. My grip tightened around the plastic spoon. A bitter pill lodged in my throat. It's for the best. Lachlan is a loose cannon. His grandfather is desperately trying to arrange a marriage to tie him down. I frowned. Wait. Someone with the power to leash Lachlan couldn't possibly be Harper, right? Wasn't the Montgomery board maneuvering to merge Lachlan and Harper's trusts via marriage? Grayson looked at me like I was an idiot. What are you talking about? Harper is Lachlan's first cousin. Her family would never agree to a standard corporate marriage anyway. Whoever marries Harper has to sign an ironclad prenup, surrendering all equity to the Kensington Trust. I froze. First cousins? I had never bothered to learn the intricate branches of his family tree. I let out a quiet, self-deprecating laugh. So what if they were blood relatives? The real obstacle between Lachlan and me wasn't another woman. It was our own toxic ambitions. The CT scan confirmed a mild concussion. After eating, the dizziness returned, and I drifted back to sleep. The private corridor outside my room was a circus for the next 2 days. Every elite family in New York sent flowers and representatives, desperate to kiss Grayson's ring. I refused all visitors. Early the next morning, Julian slipped past security. He looked uncharacteristically nervous, clutching a thermos of homemade chicken soup. It's my first time cooking. I'm not sure if it's edible. Noticing my blank stare, the tips of his ears turned bright red. Don't worry, I taste tested it. It's not poisoned. His awkwardness coaxed a genuine laugh out of me. I took a few sips. It tasted like hot salt water, but I lied and told him it was amazing. The second he left, Grayson walked in and dumped the entire thermos into the biohazard bin. He treats a woman like a goddess when he's obsessed, and throws her away like trash the second he's not. Absolute scum, Grayson muttered. I didn't disagree. Julian was, at his core, a selfish, fickle coward. With our parents still on a cruise in Monaco, Grayson refused to leave my bedside. The morning after the attack, he officially ordered Sterling Enterprises to freeze all pending collaborations with Carrington Enterprises. Every hour of delay bled millions from Vance's company. Grayson didn't care about the fines. The Carringtons couldn't afford a protracted legal war. That afternoon, Vance walked in, accompanied by his mother. Mrs. Carrington had practically watched me grow up. She brought a mountain of luxury supplements, immediately grabbing my hand and weeping. "Sienna, my poor sweet girl, I'm too ashamed to even look at you. I don't know how I'm going to discipline Chloe when she gets out." Mrs. Carrington was a famous Hollywood actress in her youth. Decades later, her acting chops hadn't rusted one bit. It was the exact same fake sympathy act she deployed when I was nearly killed on that bungee platform 5 years ago. Grayson stood silently in the corner, radiating pure murder. She was an elder, so I maintained my polite facade. I managed a weak, saintly smile. "I don't blame Vance, Mrs. Carrington. I never imagined Chloe hated me enough to try and kill me." Hearing this, the older woman let out a heavy, dramatic sigh. "That girl is feral. How could she accuse you of seducing Vance? I'll force Vance to break it off immediately." I stayed silent. This was out of character. Mrs. Carrington hated me, but she despised Chloe's low-class background even more. The Sterling Carrington feud had cost her family dearly. Given her cutthroat nature, demanding Vance dump Chloe was expected, but she was building up to a favor. Sure enough, she changed her tune. "Sienna, she must pay for what she did. But right now, she's not in a condition to handle a prison sentence. Please, as a favor to an old woman who watched you grow up, tell the DA you won't press charges." I frowned. Not in a condition? I looked up at Vance. He averted his eyes, looking sick to his stomach. There was only one reason an old-money matriarch would protect a girl she despised. Chloe was pregnant with the Carrington heir. I yanked my hand out of Mrs. Carrington's grip, looking at my brother. "Grayson, I'm tired." He understood instantly. "My sister needs to rest. Get out." Mrs. Carrington bristled, her mask slipping. "Now listen here, Grayson. Your parents and I—" She didn't get to finish. I grabbed the heavy glass water pitcher from my nightstand and hurled it violently at Vance's feet. It shattered into 100 pieces, soaking his designer shoes. Mrs. Carrington shrieked, jumping back. Tears poured down my face as I stared Vance dead in the eye. "You still don't believe me," I whispered, letting my voice crack with utter devastation. A flicker of agony crossed Vance's face. He stared at the broken glass, paralyzed. I turned my back to him, pulling the blankets up. "Get them out, Grayson." Vance didn't move until Grayson physically grabbed his shoulder. Looking at my trembling back, Vance finally made his choice. "Sienna, I swear to you, I will find out the absolute truth about what happened 5 years ago. Just give me a few days." I responded with a choked sob. Once they were gone, I made a quick phone call. Chloe's pregnancy was a curveball, but it wouldn't stop the avalanche. The Apex Medical joint venture was in its critical funding phase. It wasn't time to nuke the Carringtons completely. Harrison confirmed the first massive tranche of investment capital had cleared Vance's accounts. The total buy-in was split into 3 payments. To truly bankrupt the Carrington empire, I had to wait until the second payment cleared, draining their liquid reserves dry. By the time Grayson returned from threatening hospital security, I had ripped the bandages off my head, changed into my street clothes, and was reapplying my lipstick. "Brother, call the DA. Tell them I refuse to testify or press criminal charges. Drop the civil suit too. The theater act is over." Grayson sighed, but he trusted my lethal instincts. I discharged myself that afternoon. A mild concussion and a few stitches weren't going to slow down my corporate takeover. Chloe was furious when she found out the charges were dropped, assuming Vance had saved her. She had recently secured a supporting role in a major blockbuster and had just started filming. But Hollywood directors don't tolerate liabilities. The moment the DA leaked that she was a suspect in an unprovoked glassing of a billionaire CEO, the studio panicked. Vance, desperate to keep her stress levels down for the baby, went over her head. He threatened to pull Carrington funding from the film unless they fired her. By the time Chloe found out, she was blacklisted. Mrs. Carrington locked her in the family estate, threatening to disinherit Vance if Chloe stepped a foot outside before the baby was born. Chloe was trapped in a gilded cage. Vance, drowning in guilt and doubt over my innocence, avoided going home entirely, drowning himself in alcohol and endless business dinners. I hadn't seen him either. The Apex project required endless logistical meetings, but I sent Bennett to all of them. Whenever Vance did manage to catch me in the lobby, He looked at me like a whipped dog. I ignored him, playing the wounded victim perfectly. As Q4 approached, corporate galas stacked up, giving me the perfect excuse to ice him out. Trapped in the estate with nothing to do, Chloe started spiraling. When idle people get desperate, they make fatal mistakes. An anonymous industry insider account suddenly posted a viral thread detailing the gala incident. The thread claimed I aggressively seduced Vance, dragged him into the VIP suite, and that Chloe merely reacted in self-defense to protect her unborn child. Initially, the post gained zero traction. But then, Chloe officially liked the post from her verified Instagram account. That sent the internet into an absolute frenzy. Crazed fans flooded my company's social pages. Homewrecker. Disgusting. No wonder Chloe ignored her on the red carpet. If some rich brat tried to steal my baby daddy, I'd glass her too. My goddess is a victim of corporate bullying. Vance, be a real man and defend your pregnant girlfriend. I was casually scrolling through the hate comments when Vance called. His voice was raw and panicked. Sienna, are you okay? I stayed dead silent, letting the heavy, suffocating pause stretch. Sienna, I'm so sorry. I swear to God I had no idea she would endorse that post. I pitched my voice to a hoarse, broken whisper. Vance, stop apologizing to me. It was a soft command, but I knew it would strike his guilty conscience like a sledgehammer. Where are you? He demanded. An hour later, I was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of my 36th floor corner office, staring out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. I used to be terrified of heights. I never realized that pure, concentrated hatred could cure a phobia. During my exile in London, I spent countless sleepless nights calculating exactly how to destroy them. I wanted them to feel the exact plunging despair I felt falling off that platform. Death was too easy. I wanted them stripped of their wealth, their reputations, and their sanity. I wanted the Golden Boys ruined, and the lovers turned into bitter, bloodthirsty enemies. Only absolute destruction would balance the scales. Vance burst into my office. I had staged the room perfectly. I was curled up on the leather sofa, hugging my knees, staring blankly at the wall, surrounded by empty wine bottles. Seeing me looking so utterly broken shattered whatever remained of his loyalty to Chloe. I slowly lifted my head. My fingers trembled violently as I opened my mouth, choking on a silent sob. Vance rushed forward, collapsing to his knees and pulling me into a crushing embrace. It's my fault. Sienna, God, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I let the tears fall, soaking the shoulder of his bespoke suit. I shook my head weakly. I don't care what the internet says, Vance. I only care what you think of me. He buried his face in my neck, his voice cracking. How could I ever believe her over you? He gripped my hands tight. Sienna. I hired a private investigator. He tracked down a janitor from our prep school. The janitor saw Chloe drag you into that equipment room. She planned it. I'm so sorry. I ruined everything. My body went rigid. I didn't expect him to actually find hard proof. I assumed he'd just rely on his own growing doubts. This was a welcome surprise. I don't know how to look at you, Sienna, and I don't know what the hell to do about Chloe and the baby. Just, please, give me a little more time. I pulled back from his embrace, offering a teary, devastatingly beautiful smile. Vance, I'll wait for you. Once a man's ego dictates his reality, logic flies out the window. He happily ignored years of Chloe's devotion, rewriting history to cast me as his tragic, innocent childhood soulmate. His 5-year relationship was dead in the water. Vance unleashed his corporate PR machine. He spent millions scrubbing the trending topics, deploying elite crisis management firms to crush Chloe's fanbase. Capital always wins the internet war. As a final statement to me, Vance moved out of his family estate into a penthouse. The dynamic between us shifted into toxic ambiguity. He texted me his daily itinerary. He sent photos of his meals. He complained about his board members. I replied sparingly, tossing him breadcrumbs to keep him hooked. My aloofness drove him insane. He sent hundreds of roses to my lobby every morning. He aggressively deleted every trace of Chloe from his public life. He didn't mention his plans for his unborn child, but I knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted me as his trophy wife, Chloe as his discarded incubator, and total control of his empire. Men are endlessly greedy. Stripping him of everything was exactly what he deserved. And I was happy to play along right up until his CFO wired the second tranche of the project funds. With the scandal dying down, I finally had time to meet up with Harper Kensington. She insisted on driving us upstate to a historic Franciscan monastery hidden in the mountains. My mother was deeply religious. She used to drag us here when I was a kid. I'm a hardcore materialist. I usually just waited in the parking lot. A bunch of blessed charms from this place went viral on TikTok. Harper explained as she drove. I've been wanting one for ages. They say if the abbot blesses a bracelet for you, you're protected from all bad karma. I couldn't help but chuckle. If beads could stop bad karma, half the billionaires in New York would be dead. The monastery was quiet, the air thick with burning incense and the distant chanting of monks. Harper led me toward the main sanctuary. I stayed outside, leaning against a stone pillar, watching her kneel before the massive altar. She pressed her hands together, her eyes squeezed shut in fervent prayer. For a fleeting second, her youthful face was shadowed by a profound, agonizing sorrow. It was jarring to see on someone so bright. I turned away and spotted a stray kitten sunbathing on the cobblestones. I crouched down, scratching behind its ears. It purred loudly, rubbing against my designer boots. Sienna. I looked up just as a Polaroid camera flashed in my face. Harper grinned triumphantly, shaking the film. Careful, taking photos on sacred ground might be a sin, I teased. She waved it off, turning to a young friar sweeping nearby. God forgives everything, right? The friar just smiled gently and nodded. I sighed. The girl had zero filter. After lunch, Harper raided the gift shop, returning with a velvet pouch. She pulled out a beautiful, intricately carved wooden bead bracelet. This is for you. Make sure you wear it every single day. I blinked in surprise. I slowly unclasped my $100,000 Patek Philippe watch and let her slip the cheap wooden beads onto my wrist. It's beautiful. Thank you. What about yours? Harper shook her head, a little sadly. I don't have one. The monks say they only work if someone else gifts it to you out of pure love. I felt a sudden pang of guilt. I should have bought her one. Sensing my hesitation, she grabbed my hand and dragged me toward the hiking trail. Don't overthink it. Let's go. We hiked up the mountain path. Spending my life in sterile boardrooms and toxic galas made me forget what fresh air felt like. The quiet nature was healing. As we walked, she suddenly brought up the night of the attack. You're the kindest, bravest person I've ever met in our circles, Sienna. You're nothing like what my cousin said. I stopped dead in my tracks, raising an eyebrow. What exactly did Lachlan say about me? Harper scrunched her nose. He said you were the most venomous, manipulative snake in New York. He's an idiot. I burst out laughing. The most venomous snake. Lachlan had me pegged perfectly. But I have eyes, Harper declared proudly. I know you're amazing. She was too pure for our world. I decided to test her. Harper, I'm a businesswoman. A ruthless one. I only approached you at that gala because I saw an opportunity to gain leverage against your cousin. She didn't flinch. She just waved her hand dismissively. So what? Everyone uses everyone. People hang out with me because I'm rich and sick. If you approached me because I'm useful, and I approached you because you're cool, isn't it a win-win? I stared at her. This kid was sharper than she looked. Then what exactly do you want from me? A sly, mischievous smile lit up her face. You'll find out eventually. The wind picked up, carrying the bitter bite of incoming snow. We headed back to her G-Wagon and started the long drive back to the city. As predicted, a blizzard hit halfway down the mountain. Harper, exhausted from the hike, fell fast asleep in the passenger seat. After I dropped her off at her family's heavily guarded estate, I stood on the curb waiting for my company driver. Instead, a sleek black Maybach pulled up. The tinted window rolled down, revealing Lachlan. Get in. The snow was coming down in sheets. I didn't hesitate, slipping into the heated leather passenger seat. The sudden shift from freezing cold to intense heat made my head spin. Why didn't you call Vance's driver to fetch you? Lachlan asked, his tone dripping with acidic mockery. I stared out the window. Didn't want to bother him, Lachlan scoffed. I'd ridden in his cars before, but tonight, the cabin felt suffocatingly small. It was so quiet I could hear the steady rhythm of his breathing. I didn't give him the address to my parents' estate, opting for my private penthouse downtown. Lachlan drove excruciatingly slow. I was so drained I drifted off. When I woke up, the car was parked in my building's underground garage. I checked my phone. Over 2 hours had passed for a 30-minute drive. Catching my confused look, Lachlan muttered, "Heavy traffic. In an underground private garage?" Sure. I didn't press it. I ran a hand through my messy hair. Thanks for the ride. See you. The second my fingers touched the door handle, Lachlan lunged across the console, his large hand clamping over mine. Don't go. His voice was raw, carrying a desperate, jagged edge I'd never heard before. I turned to look at him. Lachlan's jaw was tight, his dark eyes burning with violent restraint. Sienna, don't go up. Only then did I notice he was burning up. A sheen of feverish sweat coated his forehead. His breaths came in shallow, ragged pants. I reached up to check his temperature, but he caught my wrist midair. His palm was boiling hot. Lachlan, are you sick? He ignored the question. His voice dropped to a dark, husky whisper. Sienna, do you remember exactly how many times you've hit me? I blinked, completely thrown off. He let out a low, bewitching laugh, leaning in until his lips brushed my ear. 4 times, and every single time. I just wanted to ask if your hand hurt. My brain short-circuited. I stared at him in shock. He was completely delirious. His hot breath ghosted over my knuckles as he pressed his feverish lips to the center of my palm. A jolt of electricity shot up my arm. He had lost his damn mind. Sienna, I feel like I'm dying. Can I come up for a glass of water? My body went rigid. No, I said instantly, trying to pull away. He looked up at me with such raw, naked longing it made my chest ache. I turned my head, fleeing from his gaze. Then, his fingers gently brushed the shell of my ear, sending violent shivers down my spine. Just a glass of water, Sienna. It was the weakest excuse in history. I stayed quiet. Suddenly, he turned away, coughing violently into his sleeve. He released my hand, slumping back into his seat with a bitter, defeated sigh. Go on up. I don't want you catching whatever I have. I'll be fine. He used to be a terrifying, untamed beast, but sick and shivering, he looked like a discarded stray. Watching his pale, exhausted face, my ruthless pragmatism cracked. This was my private sanctuary, a place no man had ever entered. Fine, come up. In the private elevator, Lachlan stood right behind me. The mirrored doors reflected his towering frame hovering over mine. I instantly regretted this. Lust is a guillotine hanging over a logical mind. Neither of us spoke. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. Sienna. My spine stiffened. I hated how my name sounded in his mouth. Before the doors opened, Lachlan wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, spinning me around to face him. He pinned me against the cold steel wall. His dark eyes were feral as his fingers tilted my chin up. Just look at me. His voice was a deep, guttural plea that shattered my defenses. The world outside the elevator vanished. Vance, Julian, Chloe, they ceased to exist. There was only the burning heat of the man caging me in. His thumb traced my lower lip before he crushed his mouth against mine. It wasn't a punishment this time. It was a desperate, consuming worship. As if under a dark spell, my hands slid up his chest, tangling in his dark hair. I rose on my tiptoes, kissing him back with equal ferocity. Like gasoline hitting a spark, his feverish heat ignited a raging inferno inside me, burning away my logic. The elevator dinged. Lachlan didn't break the kiss, walking me backward out of the cab and down the private hallway. I was pinned against my front door, gasping for air as his mouth trailed down my neck. I blindly punched in my passcode. The door clicked unlocked. Just as Lachlan's hot hands slid under the silk of my blouse, the door was violently yanked open from the inside. Grayson stood in the foyer. Pure reflex kicked in. I shoved Lachlan away so hard he stumbled backward into the hallway wall. My face burned as I frantically smoothed down my blouse, refusing to look my brother in the eye. Grayson, what? What are you doing in my apartment? Grayson didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on Lachlan, radiating pure, fratricidal intent. He let out a dark, terrifying chuckle. Am I interrupting something, Sienna? I didn't dare breathe. I felt like a teenager caught sneaking a boy through the window. Lachlan, however, felt zero shame. He casually wiped his swollen lips with his thumb, looking supremely annoyed that his prize had been snatched away. Grayson flashed a psychotic, overly friendly smile. Lachlan Montgomery. It's been a minute. Why don't you step inside? Let's have a little chat. I was mortified. You two were just drinking at the same gala last week. Lachlan shot me a look of profound betrayal as Grayson stepped out and threw a heavy, threatening arm around Lachlan's shoulders. I tried to intervene. Grayson, listen, go to your room, Sienna, Grayson barked, leaving zero room for argument. I winced, looking at Lachlan with deep sympathy. Grayson, don't kill him. He's running a fever. Grayson patted Lachlan's chest hard enough to make the billionaire flinch. Don't worry, sis. I'll take excellent care of him. I shot Lachlan a helpless look before retreating into my bedroom and locking the door. You're on your own, Montgomery. On Christmas Eve, the Montgomery Empire hosted their legendary winter gala. I arrived on Grayson's arm, playing the perfect sterling heiress. Lachlan was already there holding court. I could feel his predatory gaze tracking my every move across the ballroom. We hadn't spoken since the elevator incident. We didn't need to. The tension was suffocating. Dinner was starting when Vance and Julian finally arrived. To the hundreds of watching elites, it looked as if the golden trio had miraculously reunited. Only I knew the rotting hypocrisy beneath the smiles. Leveraging their crushing guilt, I had convinced both Vance and Julian to authorize the immediate release of the second and third tranches of the Apex project funding. The billions had cleared into Harrison's accounts that very morning. The trap was locked. The capital required for AI robotics was astronomical, far beyond their traditional real estate expertise. Arrogant men assume their money makes them invincible. Investing billions without doing proper due diligence on the shadow shell companies Harrison and I set up just proved they were fools begging to be slaughtered. When Julian was pulled away by a senator, Vance stepped close, clinking his champagne flute against mine. The alcohol flushed my cheeks. Vance's gaze dragged over my body, heavy with blatant possession. He hadn't returned to the Carrington estate in weeks. He hadn't seen his pregnant girlfriend. I knew that look. Vance wasn't satisfied with playing the repentant friend anymore. He wanted me in his bed. I set my glass down, excusing myself to the restroom. Instead, I bypassed security and took the service elevator to the roof. The winter wind howled across the 26th floor rooftop. Chloe Sinclair stood near the ledge, shivering in a thin, white hospital gown. Her face was gaunt, her belly visibly rounded. Hearing the door click, she turned. She forced a shattered, psychotic smile. You win, Sienna. I didn't step closer, leaning casually against the elevator housing. Given her mental state, she was a flight risk. She looked down, gently stroking her swollen stomach, a terrifyingly serene glow on her face. You know, from the moment I transferred to that school, I hated you. You had the family, the wealth, the effortless perfection. While I was starving to maintain my scholarship, you were flying to Paris for the weekend. I told myself I would take everything that was yours. I crossed my arms, my voice dead. Is that why you sliced your own arm open and framed me? Chloe let out a shrieking, manic laugh. Sienna, you already had the world. Why did you need the only two boys who ever looked at me? You can't be that greedy. If anyone is to blame, it's Vance and Julian. Their loyalty to you was so pathetically fragile, it took one razor blade to break it. Watching the untouchable Princess Sterling drag through the mud was the greatest high of my life. Her voice cracked, descending into a raw, feral scream. Who do you think you are? Some savior? I am just as smart as you. I am just as beautiful. Why did you get the empire and the perfect men while I get nothing? 5 years ago, her betrayal baffled me. I had only ever been kind to her. Now, staring at her broken mind, I understood. Some people are just born rotten. Jealousy is a terminal disease. I looked at her, feeling absolutely nothing. No triumph, no pity. She wasn't even a worthy opponent. She was just a pawn I had already sacrificed. Chloe, I said softly, my voice cutting through the wind. Being born poor isn't a sin. But being born evil is. She froze. The madness in her eyes peaked. By calling me up here, she planned to pull her ultimate two-faced mean girl trick one last time, framing me for whatever happened next. But I don't fall for the same trick twice. Chloe stepped backward onto the concrete ledge, smiling at me. Sienna, do you think they'll believe you this time? I raised an eyebrow, utterly unbothered. Do you think I still care if they do? I turned my back to her and started walking to the door. A loud scrape echoed behind me. I glanced back just in time to see Chloe step backward into the abyss. Chloe jumped. The gala below descended into absolute pandemonium. Screams shattered the elegant classical music. Chloe hadn't hit the pavement. She landed on the massive architectural terrace on the 23rd floor. Blood pooled beneath her shattered body. Vance crashed onto the terrace, falling to his knees and screaming her name. People always realize what they've lost when it's bleeding out in front of them. Vance and Julian immediately took Chloe's side, screaming for my arrest. My heart remained as still as a frozen lake. We had been alone on the roof. She was a famous actress carrying a billionaire's heir. Within minutes, the internet exploded. I was publicly accused of attempted murder. Lachlan found me as the police were storming the building. He grabbed my shoulders, looking me dead in the eye. "I'm right here. I'll handle this." Just hearing those words eased the knot in my chest. But I brushed his hands away. "I don't need rescuing, Lachlan. I've got this." I was handcuffed and escorted to the NYPD precinct. There were no security cameras on the roof. That was exactly why Chloe chose that spot. What the stupid girl didn't know was that the Montgomery Corporation had deployed high-res drone cameras to film aerial shots of their winter gala. 3 of those drones had been hovering directly above the roof the entire time. Every psychotic word she screamed, and her deliberate, unassisted, backward step off the ledge was recorded in 4K. At 1:00 a.m., my lawyers walked me out of the precinct. A mob of rabid paparazzi was swarming the precinct steps. Microphones were shoved into my face. "Miss Sterling, did your billionaires buy your freedom? Are you a murderer? Chloe Sinclair lost her baby? Do you feel any remorse for throwing a pregnant woman off a roof?" Lachlan materialized out of the dark, wrapping his massive coat around my shoulders and violently shoving reporters aside to shield me. I stopped on the steps, pulling away from his protective grip. I stared dead into the flashing cameras. 5 years ago, Chloe Sinclair transferred to my school. When bullies drenched her in ice water, I gave her my coat. The cameras clicked furiously. She repaid me by luring me into an empty room, slicing her own wrist, and falling to her knees to beg for mercy just as my best friends walked in. The reporters went dead silent. Vance Carrington and Julian Prescott refused to listen to me. To avenge her lies, they dragged me to a cliff and pushed me off a bungee platform without a harness. Tonight, Chloe Sinclair tried to execute the exact same lie. But the truth, while sometimes delayed, never dies. I turned and got into Lachlan's armored SUV. The internet practically broke in half. Paparazzi photos showed Vance and Julian weeping outside Chloe's ICU room. Netizens tore them to shreds, realizing that if my story was true, these 2 billionaires had tortured an innocent girl for a psychopath. I didn't care about the internet drama. I was waiting for Harrison's signal. At 3:00 p.m. the next day, I officially released the drone footage of the rooftop confrontation to all major news networks. 10 minutes later, Vance called me. His voice was a hollow, broken husk of a man. "Sienna, I saw the video. She killed our baby just to frame you." "God, Sienna. I'm so sorry." "It's fine," I replied, my voice light and breezy. He choked on a sob, stunned by my easy forgiveness. "Sienna, what can I do? Name your price. I'll give you anything." I let out a soft, venomous laugh. "I want Carrington Enterprises." I hung up the phone. The theater act was over. It was time for the slaughter. At 9:00 a.m. Monday morning, a tactical nuke hit the financial sector. The shadow shell companies Harrison and I set up vanished, taking the billions of Apex project funding with them. Simultaneously, massive leaks regarding Carrington Enterprises hit the press. Rampant tax evasion, bribery of federal officials, and a massive sexual assault cover-up involving their board members. It was a feeding frenzy. When the wall starts cracking, everyone pushes. Wall Street sharks that had grudges against Vance shorted his stock into oblivion. Carrington Enterprises' liquidity was permanently trapped in our fake AI project, triggering catastrophic margin calls. The stock crashed 80% in 7 days. When they failed to meet the final capital call, Aura Medical legally seized their remaining physical assets as collateral. The AI medical project was always real, I just engineered it, so my brother Sterling Capital swooped in to buy the liquidated Carrington shares for pennies on the dollar. I annihilated Vance's empire simply to hand it to Lachlan as a twisted dowry. On the day Vance Carrington officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, the memory of falling off that platform finally stopped haunting my nightmares. Julian Prescott didn't fare any better. During the chaos, Julian's ruthless uncle convened an emergency board meeting. Using Julian's horrific PR scandals, the uncle staged a corporate coup, stripping Julian of his CEO title. Stripped of his power and his... He proved it when he ambushed me in my private parking garage. The moment he lunged from the shadows and clamped a chloroform-soaked rag over my mouth, my elite security detail hired specifically for this endgame swarmed him. They beat him half to death before calling the feds. When Julian's father heard his only son was being indicted for the attempted kidnapping of a billionaire, the old man suffered a massive stroke, leaving him permanently paralyzed. With the Sterling Empire backing the prosecution, Julian was denied bail. He's looking at 20 years in federal prison. As for Vance and Chloe, they are locked in a customized hell. Chloe survived the fall, but her pelvis was shattered, leaving her permanently crippled. The baby didn't make it. Vance was stripped of every cent, his assets seized by the IRS. A man born with a silver spoon forced to survive in a roach-infested studio apartment is a fate worse than death. He can't kill himself. His elderly parents rely on him. Trapped in poverty, Vance turns his violent, drunken rage onto Chloe. They torment each other in that tiny apartment. I pay a private investigator a handsome salary to ensure Vance never holds a job above minimum wage for the rest of his miserable life. With the Sterling infusion, Aura Medical monopolized the U.S. market. Within 6 months, our factories were mass-producing life-saving tech. I became a Wall Street legend overnight. Everyone knew Sienna Sterling orchestrated the bloodiest corporate massacre in New York history. No one dared look me in the eye ever again. Grayson bought the foreclosed Carrington Tower and gifted it to me as the new Aura headquarters. On New Year's Eve, I skipped the elite galas. I was sitting alone in my penthouse, drinking scotch and watching the fireworks explode over Central Park. The concierge rang up, saying I had a visitor. A minute later, my private elevator pinged open. I opened the door to find Lachlan standing there. His bespoke coat was dusted with heavy snow. He had deep, purple bags under his eyes, looking dangerously exhausted. I hadn't seen him since the gala. "Sienna," he breathed. The raw exhaustion in his voice cracked my heart in half. I stepped back to let him in. But he didn't wait. His hand clamped the back of my neck, kicking the door shut as he crushed his mouth against mine. It wasn't a kiss. It was a violent claiming, pouring weeks of agonizing withdrawal into my lungs. My knees went weak. When he finally pulled back, his hand gripped my waist tight enough to bruise. "Missed me, huh?" he teased, his dark eyes flashing. My face burned. I pushed at his chest. "Go wash your hands." His gaze darkened, turning lethal. "We'll go together." Before I could object, he swept me into his arms, carrying me down the hall. "I have a cousin on the West Coast," he murmured casually against my neck. "Turns out he's highly motivated to take over the Montgomery Empire." My body froze. I stared at him in utter shock. Lachlan kicked my bedroom door open and tossed me onto the California King mattress. He shrugged off his coat and ripped his shirt over his head. I gasped, scrambling up. His torso was covered in horrific, blooming purple bruises and fresh lacerations. I reached out with trembling fingers, tracing a healing scar over his ribs. He had been fighting in underground, bare-knuckle death matches. "Lachlan, what the hell did you do?" He smirked, leaning over me like a predatory cat. The old man froze my trust fund and stripped my shares when I handed the company to my cousin. I had to vent my frustrations in the ring. He had burned his kingdom to the ground just to be with me. His battered, breathtaking face was illuminated by the fireworks outside. The rhythmic, deafening pounding in my ears was my own heartbeat. I reached up and pulled him down, pressing a desperate, reverent kiss to his lips. That single touch ignited a firestorm. "Sienna," he rasped, his voice dark and thick with lust. "Do you like me?" He grabbed my hand, guiding it down his stomach. Feeling the intense, burning heat radiating from him, I gasped, trying to pull away. He let out a dark, wicked chuckle, pinning my wrists above my head. The fireworks drowned out my moans as I let him drag me into the abyss. I've always known love is a liability, but as he worshipped every inch of me, I decided I didn't care. I'd trade the world for a monster who loved me this ruthlessly. In early March, Harper Kensington suffered a massive heart attack and was rushed to Mount Sinai. She required emergency open-heart surgery. I stood outside the ICU doors for 14 hours, staring blankly at the red surgical light. I remembered every moment with her shielding her from those vultures, hiking up the mountain, the way she called me sister-in-law with that bright, infectious giggle. In a city full of vipers, she was the only pure thing left. She didn't deserve to die. I left the hospital and drove my sports car at 100 miles per hour all the way upstate to the monastery. I ran up the mountain path. Harper had told me that if you walk this path with pure devotion, your prayers will be answered. I dropped to my knees on the cold stone floor of the chapel. I, the ultimate atheist, clasped my hands together and prayed until my knees bled. I begged whatever God existed to take my fortune and spare her life. When I finally drove back, Lachlan caught me in the lobby. The surgery was a success. She was stable. I slumped against the wall, weeping with relief. A week later, Harper was cleared to fly to California for long-term recovery. We met her at the private tarmac. She was sitting in a wheelchair, bundled in cashmere. When Lachlan stepped away to talk to the pilot, I crouched down to her eye level. "You listen to your doctors, kid. Lachlan and I will fly out to bother you every weekend," I ordered gently. She smiled that brilliant, sweet smile. "Sienna, can I get a hug?" I leaned down and wrapped my arms around her fragile shoulders. As I held her, she whispered softly into my ear, "Sienna, I love you." Her voice was so fragile it almost vanished in the jet engine's roar. When I pulled back, she wouldn't look at me, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. I was stunned. Oh. It all made sense now. The monastery. The charm. The blatant rejection of every man at the gala. I reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I smiled, my eyes filled with absolute protective adoration. "Thank you, Harper. I am truly honored." Her shoulders dropped in relief, her eyes shining with unshed tears. As the private jet vanished into the clouds, Lachlan wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me against his side. "What did you say to her to make her cry like that?" I smiled, leaning my head against his shoulder. "Nothing, just girl talk. Let the secrets of a girl's first love remain forever sealed in the sky."